Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
So this week's Parsha is MIshpatim. It's a Parsha that is really dealing with what seems to be in some ways the mundane. So we've gone from these stories of, leadership and birth of a nation and the idea of what this people are supposed to be. And it's a touchstone for us. And so Mishpatim is leaving the realm of theoretically, what are we supposed to be as a people? What this grand story of redemption and this grand story of what we're supposed to be building. It leaves that and really goes to everyday life and talks about how are you supposed to do things every day. And it adjudicates, these are actual cases, right? So this is case law. When X happens, this is what you do because X has happened, right? This is not theoretical. This is clearly case law, right? That somebody dug a hole, an ox fell in it, and the ox died. And now who's responsible and to what degree, right, for that property that's for that property that's destroyed, right? Who's responsible? How much? And so this is case law, and it can feel pretty dry. So I want to look at some of it because it does give us a sense of what justice looks like, or like what the early Israelites understood to be a just system. And so I want to look at some of that. And then I want to go to a bigger discussion of about this kind of Torah versus the kind of Torah we've been studying. Rabbi Tirza Firestone has a really lovely piece that I found very moving. And the reason I find that bigger Torah versus the kind of mundane daily Torah to be the meta discussion that I want to have is because I feel like this is where a lot of us are living right now. We are living in the details that we don't want to be living in. We'd rather be living in the grand story of the meaning of my life and what do I want to be doing with my life now? You all know I'm turning 60 next month. It's like, what do I want as I turn 60, as I enter this decade, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? I'm dealing with emails from the SBA and I'm dealing with, insurance adjusters and I'm dealing with Chase Bank statements to see, can I replace anything that burned, that I purchased since October, right? So these are not the things we want to be focused on, but this is what it is, right? This is what is now, is that we are having to deal with these aspects of daily life and the details of it in order to build a life that we then can ask big questions about. And it's both and, it's not either or, but I just found myself resisting wanting to study this Parsha the same way I resist getting to the emails about the fire or about, next steps or about, whatever I'm having to do, in my job as somebody dealing with this catastrophe. So I thought that was, for me, informative. Like Amy, whenever there's resistance like that, it's like, what's going on? Right? To hold that with some curiosity rather than just go, this is the Parsha, right? Is to say, what is that resistance about? Right? And it's like, oh, right. Because the Parsha is mundane and I'm so tired of the mundane. And I don't get to pick. I don't get to pick the Parsha and I don't get to pick, what emails I have to deal with today and what, this FEMA or whoever needs from me by tomorrow afternoon. All right, so let's look a little bit. And Bert, if you want to just weigh in and wax poetic about any of this, please feel free to do so. I know how much you love this. So let's look at some of the text so you get a sense of what I'm talking about when I say the mundane. All right, remember we are living in ancient Israel in a culture that both has agriculture and they are semi-nomadic pastoralists. So you've got a lot of animals and flocks that you're dealing with, and you're dealing with fields and vineyards and, fruit trees. So both of those are happening in ancient Israel. You have semi-nomadic pastoralists and you have settled agrarian folks. So case law is going to come out of both of those kinds of ways to make a living. So here we see we're in chapter, if you're in your own Bible, chapter 22, verse 4. When a man has a field or a vineyard grazed in and sends his grazing flock free so that it grazes in another's field, the best part of his field, the best part of his vineyard, he is to pay. Right? So we're talking about animals crossing into somebody else's property, because this is the tension when you have agrarian society alongside semi-nomadic pastoralists. This is the tension, is you've got animals doing stuff, and then you've got people whose livelihood depends on the field. So the tension is, keep your animals out of my field, right? Or keep your field out of my animals, whichever, okay? So this, again, case law, because this happened, that animals wandered in, ate the good part of somebody's crop, and now here we get the case law about what's supposed to happen. This speaks a little bit to us. When fire breaks out and reaches thorn hedges and a sheaf stack or the standing grain or the entire field is consumed, he is to pay, yes, pay he that caused the blaze to blaze up. Makes sense, right? If somebody's found responsible for starting a fire and it burns down somebody's field, he's responsible. The person who, was negligent or who set the fire. When a man gives silver or goods to his fellow for safekeeping and it is stolen from the man's house, if the stealer is caught, he is to pay twofold, right? So not just pay for what was taken, but you have to pay because you stole. If the stealer's not caught, the owner of the house is to come near God's oracle to inquire if he did not stretch out his hand against his neighbor's property. So to swear that he didn't take it himself, it was taken from his home. But the implication is, if someone gives you something for safekeeping, you have a responsibility to keep it under lock and key, right? That you need to treat it like as your own. You don't just like leave it on the front porch for somebody to come get. Regarding every matter of transgression, regarding oxen, donkeys, sheep, garments, any kind of loss about which one can say that is it, meaning you can point to it, before God's oracle is the matter of the two of them to come. Whomever God's oracle declares guilty is to pay twofold to his neighbor. When a man gives his neighbor a donkey or an ox or a lamb or any kind of beast for safekeeping, and it dies or is crippled or captured, no one seeing it happen, the oath of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is to be between the two of them to inquire if he did not send out his hand against his neighbor's property. The owner is to accept it, and he does not have to pay. But if it was stolen away from him, he is to pay back its owner. So if something happens to an animal in your care and you didn't cause it, you don't have to pay. Like if something happens to this animal, it has a seizure and dies, you don't have to pay. Once you swear you had nothing to do with it. But if you didn't keep it under lock and key and it was stolen out of your garage, then you're responsible and have to replace it. If it was torn to pieces, he is to bring it as evidence. What was torn, he does not have to pay back. So if a wolf gets into your donkey pen and destroys your neighbor's donkey that you're watching, you're not responsible, but you have to prove that it was torn by a wild beast. When a man borrows it from his neighbor and it is crippled or it dies, if its owner was not with it, he is to pay. If its owner was with it, he does not have to pay. If it was hired, its hiring price is considered received. When a man seduces a virgin who's not been spoken for and lies with her, for the marrying price, he is to marry her as his wife. If her father refuses to give her to him, silver he is to weigh out according to the marriage price of virgins. So remember, a woman's sexuality belongs to her father if she's a virgin and not promised to someone. And so the father is paid the damages because she can't get the bride price that a virgin would get. So her father is compensated with the bride price or with her marrying the person that has lay with her. Magic was very, very serious in the ancient world. Magic was taken very seriously. So sorcery was not tolerated. Other kinds of magic were. So other kinds of things were, but what's not kosher is serious, right? So you can go before the oracle and the oracle can tell you yes or no. That's all right, because that's God. That's Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. But Any kind of sorcery, absolutely forbidden, absolutely capital punishment, because remember, this is a theocracy. This is not a democracy. This is a theocracy. So the king is God. And if you do something against the king, in every society we know of, there are serious consequences if you betray the king. It is considered being traitorous. Traitorous? Is that how you say it? And that is capital punishment. It's deserving of capital punishment. So this is not about just magic. This is about going against Yud He Vav He, stepping outside of that relationship to use other kinds of power. And that is seen as disloyalty to the king. And that is treason. Anyone who lies with the beast is to be put to death. So this, again, capital punishment, because clearly for them, this is a taboo that is really, really scary for them, right? To cross certain lines was absolutely terrifying in terms of what you can allow without punishment. Like it has to be taken care of immediately. One who sacrifices to other gods, right? That same thing. That only Yud He Vav He, because otherwise it is treason. Now, a sojourner you are not to maltreat, you are not to oppress him, for sojourners were you in the land of Egypt. Very important baseline is you can't treat others as though they're others because it was you. You don't get to otherize anybody because it was you. You were the other. So never, never, never can you say about someone else, well, this is providence. This is divine providence that they're poor or that they are refugees. And so therefore, obviously, God is not smiling upon them. So I get to treat them however I want. The baseline is that was you. So don't you think for 1 second they are different from you. Therefore, you will treat them with respect and you will not oppress somebody who has no family ties to protect them. That's what a ger is. A ger is someone with no ties to protect them, no relationships to protect them, living in Israel, living among the Israelites. They are therefore vulnerable, right? They don't have people to what do you call it? To revenge, to take, revenge, to avenge them if something happens to them. That's why they're vulnerable, because their people are somewhere else. And we know that. We know since ancient times into modern times, people who don't have anyone around them, they are vulnerable in a different way because they just are, right? And so are the widow and the orphan, right? Somebody who doesn't have a male head of household to protect them or avenge them are seriously vulnerable in the ancient world. And I would say even now, when we think about women heads of household who live in poverty, they are vulnerable. They are open to exploitation of all kinds. If you afflict them, they will cry out to me and I will hearken to their cry. So here we get tza'ok yitz'ak. They will cry out. And what we know in Torah is anytime the innocent cry out, God responds. And God responds with vengeance on behalf of the wronged innocent and vulnerable. So the people aren't redeemed from slavery until they cry out. Once they cry out, now God acts on their behalf and says to Cain, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. And then God acts, right? Because Abel now has to be in some way avenged. My anger will flare up and I will kill you with the sword so that your wives become widows and your children orphans. So poetic justice, if you will. If you lend money to my people, to the afflicted one who lives beside you, you are not to be to him like a creditor. You are not to place on him excessive interest. So if somebody needs to borrow money because their crop failed and they need to buy seed, you can't take advantage of their situation and charge them exorbitant rates of interest. I always point out this is, of course, where the church read itself as the new Israel. and couldn't charge interest that made it worth people risking their money, their capital. Why that one and not other ones? I don't know. But the church understood themselves to be the new Israel. They couldn't lend at interest. So who did they go to borrow money from? The Jews, because they couldn't charge each other interest. So nobody's going to lend their capital and risk it. What if you lend a noble money to go to war with another noble and they lose, you don't get your money back. So the only thing that makes that risk worth it is that you charge 20% interest. And then they owe you, right? And they owe you interest. So the Jews are who people went to borrow money in the Middle Ages, because they weren't allowed to be part of the guild or any kind of trade. They weren't allowed to serve in the military. They weren't allowed to own property. And so one of the things they could do was lend capital at interest. So when that noble borrows the money and loses the war, who does the noble owe? The Jews. So one of the best ways to eradicate that debt is eradicate the Jews you owe it to. So, and this is where we get a lot of that stuff about Jews and money, right? A lot of it comes from the fact that that's how they could make a living, is lending capital. Right. Back to ancient Israel, if you take in pledge the cloak of your neighbor, before the sun comes in, return it to him. For it is his only clothing. It is the cloak for his skin. In what else shall he lie down? Now it will be when he cries out to me, I will hearken, for a compassionate one am I. Right. So again, the vulnerable who only have a cloak to sleep in at night, it's their sleeping bag. It's the only protection they have against the elements. If they give it to you as surety for a loan, you can't keep it overnight. You can keep it during the day, but you have to give it back every night, because that's the only thing they have to protect them from the elements. And presumably, yitzak elai, they will cry out to me. And when they do, v'shamati, I will hear. And when God hears the cries of the innocent, what happens? Right. Elohim lo tikalel, you are not to curse God, and an exalted one among your people you are not to curse. So you can object to somebody's opinion. You cannot call the senator a buffoon in public, because it's disrespectful. They've taken on leadership. You can disagree with them. You can elect them. You can vote them out of office, but you can't curse them and embarrass them publicly because they've taken on service. Your full fruit of your trickling grapes you are not to delay. The firstborn of your sons give to me. So this is about taking bikurim. This is about taking first fruits of your crop. You're to do that first. The first thing you're supposed to do is set aside the portion that is for God quickly. Like you do that as you're harvesting, you take your first fruits and you set them aside and make them off limits. They are taboo because they are for God, as is your firstborn child who you are going to redeem, right? You're going to redeem your firstborn, because who fills in for the firstborn? The Levites, right? God takes the tribe of Levi instead of taking everybody's firstborn. So you have to redeem your firstborn because they belong technically to God, as does the firstborn of your ox, your sheep. All of that belongs to God. But God here is saying, I am a compassionate God. Let it be with its mother for 8 days. You don't take it from the mother before 8 days, and then it is dedicated to God. Anshe Kodesh Tihiyuli, y'all will be people of holiness to me. That means flesh that is torn to pieces in the field, you are not to eat. To the dogs, you are to throw it. So what does that mean? That means if you're holy people, you don't go eating roadkill. A holy people doesn't eat roadkill. Anything that's kind of gotten dead some other way, you can feed to animals. You don't eat it as a person. If you're living lives of holiness, you are to eat only sanctified meat, meaning meat that has been offered as a sacrifice and has been offered properly by shechting it, by the way that it's slaughtered. You don't just come across something laying in the road and eat it. This is how ancient Israel understood consuming, having to do with eating in line with holiness. So it goes on. You can't, right, spread rumors. So it goes on about lying and like false testimony. You're not to go after the majority that are doing evil. You can't say, well, everybody else is doing it, right? If everyone else jumped off the roof, like I don't know how many of you were raised with that. Well, if everyone else is jumping off the roof, so now we have more about testimony. And one of my favorites, when you encounter your enemy's ox or his donkey straying, return it to him. So like, what is this about? When you see the donkey of one who hates you crouching under its burden, restrain from abandoning it to him. Unbind it together with him. So what is this? This is about if you come across a stray animal that belongs to someone you hate, you have to return it. Because it's not the animal's fault. You don't get to have the animal like wander around without food or shelter or water or safety or a barn to sleep in because you don't like the owner. No excuse. But notice, Torah doesn't say if you find your best friend's ox, return it. Why? Because Torah knows you're going to return your best friend's thing, right? But what might happen is if you can't stand that person, you might be like, nah, Margot left the gate open again. And so like, too bad, so sad for Margot's donkey. Well, it's not Margot's donkey's fault. So you don't get to punish the donkey because you hate Margot. So just saying. So Torah knows human nature, and this is case law because this is what happens. It happens with the people you don't like. And same when you see something struggling under a burden, right? It's fallen over because it's the burden is too heavy. If it's somebody's donkey that you hate, you don't leave the donkey there under that burden and it can't get up. That's not okay. Again, you don't have to say it for somebody that you like. Duh. Of course you're going to help. It's when you're tempted to just leave it there because it belongs to somebody you can't stand, or who can't stand you. Like, no, it's not the donkey's fault. You don't get to have the donkey suffer because it's, belongs to somebody that you don't like. So this is the kind of case law we have. This is about bribes. This is about testimony. This is again with the ger. The ger's feelings for sojourners were you in the land of Egypt. We get Shemitah. We get that the land deserves a rest. So we get all of these very meticulously laid out things of tort law as well as sacred law, right? What's coming next is festivals, that you will keep the festivals. Because remember, this is a theocracy. There's no difference between what happens to property and what you do in terms of holding to Yahweh's festivals, because Yahweh is king. Yahweh's festivals are therefore national observances. And so it's treason, right, to not follow the orders of Yud He Vav He as regards both case law and ritual law. Bert?
You invited me to comment, so I will.
Good.
I think of Hillel, the famous story about Hillel. Someone said, I'll convert to Judaism if you can explain the whole Torah standing on one leg. And he said, do not do unto others as you don't want them to do unto you. All the rest is commentary. Now go study. And so even though these things seem mundane, at least for me, what Torah is about is not so much the big stuff, but the small stuff. It's about how we treat each other on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sure we've all known people who were totally involved in the big stuff and rotten to the people around them. So to me, it begins with all of this, although a lot of it seems to have nothing to do with our lives today. But Torah in daily life, to me, is the beginning. And maybe the big stuff is the context but I think it's too easy to get caught up in the big stuff and to forget the small.
Right. So thank you for that. Yes, it's clear that, for the folks studying Torah, for the folks writing Torah, for the folks who canonized the Torah, the small stuff was included because it is about how we treat each other and how we do these things as much as it is about what we're doing on some grand scale, right? It's great to say you shall be a nation of priests and you shall pursue justice, but what does that look like, right? That looks like you don't spread rumors that you don't know are true. You just don't do that because it just undermines relationships. It undermines trust. It undermines people's faith in reality. If I'm hearing stuff that's not true and I'm spreading that, people believe that, that's not reality. That starts to eat away and erode, right, the kind of society that we're looking to build. So the small stuff for Torah matters a lot.
Amy?
Yeah.
Isn't it still a rumor? If it's true, I should still keep my mouth shut?
So the rabbis say yes. Torah doesn't say that, but the rabbis do. The rabbis call it Lashon Hara. The rabbis call it gossip. Even if it's true, you're not supposed to be talking about other people at all. But Torah seems to be concerned about things that you don't know to be true, right? That you're not supposed to spread things that you don't know to be true. Margot?
I was going to say that I had the same thoughts as Bert. Like, I think that just as a the spirituality of our tradition, we're trying to connect with God. We're going up there. But I think the micro is really important too, because we still have to live together as people and figure out how to live together, right? So having, when I study Torah or when I read or when I just kind of reflect, a lot of it is like time travel to me. Like, what is the consciousness of our people at this time as well? So when we look about, shaping a civilization, creating, dare I say, rules, for the first time that tell us like, this is what we do and this is what we don't do. Like, that's how culture is formed in any space. So I feel like very proud that we do have some evidence, right, of these rules or these shapings being created. And it does help us balance, between where we are spiritually, maybe, in our private sense of, spiritual identity or connection to God, etc. But no matter what, like, there are Jewish people that do stuff that I'm like, that is not holy. Like, why are you doing that, right? So just a shout out for, I was feeling the same also about our community piece.
Thanks.
Hi, Amy.
Uh-huh.
This repeats something that you brought up last week that has always impressed me. We are concerned in Torah and as Jews with responsibility. Western law is concerned with rights. It's a vast difference and an important one for all Jews to remember. It's our responsibility to worry about things, not our right to mistreat people.
Right. Very good. Thank you for that reminder. And remember, this is written, all of this law is written for privileged citizens of Israel. This is for citizens, right, who own animals or property, right? This is not written to the stranger or the widow or the orphan, right? This is written exactly that. It's written to Israelites who have privilege. Here are your responsibilities. Since you have privilege, you must protect the vulnerable. So I think it's just really important that we understand that our system of justice is saying exactly that. You, citizens of this country, have responsibilities to the people who do not have the rights that you do explicitly. They have rights because they are mine, says God. Even if your constitution doesn't say it explicitly, know that they will cry out to me and I will hear. Yes, Richard.
Particularly at the beginning of this parsha, when they're talking about the fields, like if something burns down, you pay, yes, pay. And there's this, the way the sentences end is like X, yes, X. In other words, the whatever it is that you're supposed to do to recompense the other party is repeated. And so often in prior parshas, you've made a point about the non-repetitiveness of Torah.
Mm-hmm.
And yet here we're getting explicitly repetitiveness, like yes,
Right.
I'm not kidding. You pay,
Right.
or yes, you pay double, or death, yes, death. Now is that because the people writing this were essentially Israel's proto-lawyers, and so it's kind of like almost like writing a legal textbook where everything goes into super detail, or did the rabbis think there was some other reason why God's word is being repeated so often?
Right. So thank you. Good noticing. Right. So Torah doesn't repeat itself unless it does. Right. And if it does, then Torah is trying to communicate something. So the problem with the English is that you can't get a sense of what it's doing in the Hebrew. And in the Hebrew, the form is, there isn't yes and then the word repeated. It is an intensification of the verb. And so it's like, yea, surely you shall, like there's not a way in English to say it without it sounding repetitive. So it is a repeat of the verb, like to pay, to kill, to whatever. Yes, but it's an intensification of the verb. And yes, that is a statement that it's intensified is in a statement that I'm not kidding. Absolutely. And yes, this is written by people who cared about the law. And so, so attorneys care a lot about, right? I said I would fine you and I mean it. The judge will fine you. Like if you, right? So yes, they are serious about it. And the intensification is on purpose. And it is about holiness, not just about this is what we've decided is the law. This is what God is saying is right and just. And it will be God who guarantees the consequences if this is not followed. And yes, Mario, not everybody was particularly concerned with law and order. So sure. And we might understand it differently. Like I'm going to understand the law differently from you. If I own crops and you own animals, we already start from a different place of whose rights, right, are being violated. And right. So as a pastoralist, wait a minute, my flock has to eat. But me as a landed agrarian, blah, blah, like you can't have your animals come into my orchard and eat my stuff. That's my living. So already you've got people coming from different perspectives on whose rights are being violated. And so that's why there's case law, because this happened, that people's interests were bumping up against each other. And so you have to figure out a way to solve that. Marga?
Yeah, just one more thought on all of that just, from then to now, like the people who are creating this law are inscribing it, right? They are literate. They are writing it down. They are studying, legal documentation. They're critical thinking involved, right? So assuming that when you're dealing with a large group of folks, right, like, as a civilian, maybe I'm not as concerned or as experienced with these matters, so I'm not going to be the one writing them. And if I were the one writing law, maybe I would choose different things because that's my, my point of view is, in whatever I'm involved in. So I do just want to emphasize that the power of communication, the ability to read and write, education is really, I think, has kind of pushed. I think it's evidence of how it survived even to this day, right? And we see this, and I think a lot of us have that same feeling that we see our own, tribal ways in the nation we live in today. So just a lot of.
And the ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Bingo.
Right? So that's why the law, another reason the law is here is because Israelites need to know the law. You can't say, oh, well, that's for lawyers. I didn't know that. Oh, really? Well, Exodus 22 says it explicitly. So what do you mean you didn't know that?
Right.
As the owner of an ox. Right? Like, no, it's right there in Exodus. So you can't claim ignorance because you don't know the law. So I think that's important too, that it's assumed that you know it. It's assumed that the people who are citizens are knowing and following this idea of building a just, right, and equitable society in the ways that we can. It's not going to be equal. It's not communism. But there is a bottom threshold below which you're not allowed to fall as a holy people in terms of exploitation. All right. So did you want to say something, Robin?
Yes. I wanted to synthesize it all down to a few words here.
Okay.
What was created in the Torah and all of these laws is to have a fair, just, and kind world. It's simple. And that they've given us all the ways to do it.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's simple and it isn't, right? So Torah understands, yes, it's simple, but it also isn't, right? Because when you have a conflict of interest,
You have to say it all.
People see it different, right? So, but here's the law, if, then, and then you're supposed to argue about it.
Right.
And figure it out. When there's a clash, you have to argue about it and figure out, just like with the Constitution, which part of the law do you apply in this case, right? Okay. So after all of these laws in Mishpatim are given, we get a sentence famous in our tradition, a famous sentence from chapter 24, verse 7. Moshe took Sefer Habrit, this book of the covenant, and read it aloud to the people. Vayomru kol asher diber Adonai naaseh v'nishma. And they said, meaning in response to hearing all of this, everything that Yud-Heh Vav-Heh has said, naaseh v'nishma. We will do and we will listen. Now, for our tradition, it doesn't make a lot of sense to say, we'll do it and then we'll listen. Usually, you would say, we'll listen, understand what you want of us, and then we'll do it. So there's reams, as you know, because we've done it together, reams of commentary on this verse about why does it say na'aseh v'nishma, why in this order. It doesn't make sense, even in Hebrew, to put we will do it and then we're going to listen to what you have to say. That doesn't make any sense. So obviously the answer is not, it's a literary technique. I mean, that is not how our tradition understands a lot of things. It's that must mean something. So Rashbam says, meaning we'll carry out what God has said already, and we're also ready to listen to anything else God commands from now on. Okay. Meaning na'aseh, we'll do what we've already heard, but nishma, and we're ready to listen for the ways we're called forward next to live into this. Okay, beautiful interpretation. Rabbi Elazar, this is from Shabbat, this is from the Talmud. Rabbi Elazar said, when the Jewish people accorded precedence to the declaration we will do over we will hear, a divine voice, a bat kol, comes and says, who revealed to my children this secret that the ministering angels use? As it is written, blessed be God, you angels of God, you mighty in strength that fulfill God's word, hearkening unto the voice of God's word. First, the angels fulfill God's word, and only after do they hearken. All right, so they're taking a line of Torah and reading into it the same order of words that the angels do God's word, Devaro, lishmoa bekol Devaro. And then it says they hear the word of the divine, so that it's actually the way the angels function. And God is saying, wow, who came and revealed to humanity the angelic way to do things, which is to do it first and only then to listen. So Aviva Zornberg picks up on this, and she says, at first sight, the idea of doing before hearing implies a kind of rashness, a lack of circumspection. Rashi, in fact, directly addresses this when he observes that the Israelite response is different from that of other servants who first listen to the command to find out whether they are able to accept it or not. This very rashness, however, is called by God the secret of the angels. Implicit in this description is the idea of a modality generally inaccessible to the human. Rather archly, God chides the people for making use of an esoteric order of things. Who revealed this to you? Is, of course, a covert compliment to the angelic virtue within an apparent irrationality. In saying, we shall do and we shall hear, The Talmud implies that people assume some of the virtuosity of the angels who are capable precisely of such a brilliant power of action. So God is complimenting human beings who in this case are saying, Na'aseh v'nishma, that is the power of the angels. You don't wait to hear the command and go, let me see if I can figure out how to do that. It's nope, we're going to do it, and then tell me more. Right? We're going to do it. We're going to jump in. We're going to say yes. We're going to do it, and then we'll listen more explicitly to the. So text number 4, text number 6. I wanted to do. V'avodah sheyesh b'diburei Torah. So the service, the divine service that is contained in these words, we will hear, means the hidden, says Likutei Moharan. For the precept itself, which we can fulfill, is called we will do. But the service contained in these statements, we have no knowledge of, corresponding to we will hear, meaning we will hear what is hidden. So we'll do what's obvious. We will hear means something that we don't quite get yet, that which is still hidden. What does Zornberg say about that? The two dimensions of Na'aseh and Nishma are to be found at every level and in all worlds. Moving from one level to another, one's previous Nishma, an area of hiddenness, becomes one's new Na'aseh, area of fulfillment. And one acquires a new area of Nishma, of hiddenness. In this difficult passage, Rabbi Nachman, who wrote Likutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman maps the world as consisting of nuclei of commandments, of required acts, surrounded by aureolas of words that tease us out of thought. You have to love her language here. These aureolas, the language is explicitly circular, past one's understanding, yet clearly they are part of the field of consciousness. They form a kind of horizon, a sense of presence of the not yet known. All right, I know that was complicated. I know it's feeling a little esoteric. I get that. But I want to go to Tirza Firestone, who makes it explicit what Aviva Zornberg and Rabbi Nachman are talking about. There are areas that are hidden, and there are areas that are revealed. What right now is revealed to us was at one point hidden, right? So those of y'all who have figured out the way to do something that's proper, you didn't always know that. When you were younger and less experienced, that was a realm that was hidden. Now that you're older and have lived a while and have failed a couple of times, or maybe done it the wrong way and saw the results of that, now that area of hiddenness is explicit for you. It is revealed. And so you know how to do it. You know the best way to do it. Does that make sense? But at one time that was concealed. It was hidden from you. So there are still things that are hidden from us because we haven't experienced everything yet, right? The realm of how to deal with a burned down house is not a realm I'm familiar with, right? That was Nistar. That was hidden to me, the world of FEMA before. Now it's not. Now I understand, not a lot, but I understand something about how that world of insurance works. Okay, so that's what Rabbi Nachman is saying, and that is what Aviva Zornberg picks up on, that surrounding things we know is this areola of what we don't know, but we sense is there. And at some point, what we know will expand, what is revealed will expand, and something else is hidden that we didn't know. So I want to go to what Tirza Firestone does with this. She points out that this Torah portion of MIshpatim is read in the month of Adar, in the month of Purim, right? So Margot's favorite. So she says this month is traditionally a time when we shake off our winter doldrums, we pull out our costumes and Megillah and get a little tipsy and silly and make fun of the evil lurking. Marbin b'simcha, we wax in joy. This year, that may be a stretch for some of us. This was not written this year, but I picked it because I was like, oh, yeah, you think? Well, this felt right on the nose for me anyway. It spoke deeply to me. This year, that may be a stretch for some of us. our sense of joy and effervescence may be more sober this year. We may feel more tuned into the fragility of life than to the frivolity of Purim. Amen, sister. That begs a point. The tension between our inner Torah of our kishkas and the outward Torah of Sinai. I've always felt there are two Torahs and that they must be in dialogue. There is a Torah written within us, the Torah of our lives. Your Torah is written betoch mayai, in my guts, said King David. And God, through the prophet Jeremiah, says, I have assigned my Torah to your innermost parts and inscribed it on your hearts. I, Tirza Firestone, call this the Torah of now. And then there is the ancient Torah that we just received last Shabbat. When we stood at Sinai as a nascent people, there were all manner of pyrotechnica and cosmic consciousness, a mountain on fire, the blasts of heavenly shofar, and the earth is rumbling and lightning is flaring. Now we come down off the mountain and settle into earthly mode to study the how-tos and wherefores, to translate the ungraspable awe into building a society, into behaviors that embody the profound experience of holiness into a day-to-day structure. Welcome to MIshpatim. It is important to know that 3,000 plus years ago, the many laws given in this week's Parsha were edgy, unorthodox, unprecedented in the ancient Near East. For example, laws about care of the widow and orphan, not taking interest on loans, the injunction against bribery. Women were equal to men as parents and in matters of bodily harm and in laws of damages, which they were not, by the way, in other ancient Near Eastern societies and societies after that, including places in the world today. Justice for the poor, the enslaved, the accused criminal, and even justice for animals. 3,000 years ago, these laws surpassed the standards of all the surrounding societies. Torah accounted for human nature, that we have enemies, a need for revenge, that people are naturally xenophobic. One law I love, an animal in distress could not be ignored just because its owner was an enemy. The outer Torah and the inner Torah, the ancient Torah and the Torah of now, are in profound dialogue right now. At the end of MIshpatim, God says, behold, I am sending you an angel to protect you now. Shema b'kolo, listen to the angel's voice. It will guide you, and you will be safe in this world. So who is that angel? Perhaps it's the voice of the inner Torah that God has implanted in our innermost parts. And the people having received all of these laws say in unison the famous words, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will act and we will listen. We will follow the outward Torah in our actions, and we will keep listening to our inner Torah, the angel, the still small voice that guides us through the minefield of these hard times. Enacting our ancient traditions through these challenging times, that's Na'aseh. We will do. Nishma, simultaneously listening to the interior law, the inner guidance described in our hearts. Torah, that's v'nishma, right? We will listen. Torah of Sinai and the Torah of now, with both and, Spirit promises we will be okay. We will not succumb to the pressures and upheavals of these hard times. We will not lose our way in the world or the thread of our own divinity. To me, it was just like, and there it is, people, right? The Torah of now is the Torah of FEMA, the Torah of 18-month leases, the Torah of deciding where are we going to live the rest of our lives for some of us. The Torah of now is mundane and it's not fun. The Torah of now is necessary. The Torah of Sinai is lofty and grand, and we need to be listening for that. And we need to constantly be checking our kishkas for what they tell us is, right, the Torah of Sinai, our innermost Torah. And there's the Torah of helping someone else fill out the SBA form. There's the Torah of now that we are called to do. They're not exclusive. They are complementary. The details that we have to follow, the processes and procedures that we have to follow, what's the right procedure? What's the right process to do something? Not just the end result. What's the right way to do it? What's the respectful way to do it? That we have to talk about and we have to agree on and we have to hammer it out. And it's not going to be pretty all the time, right, Lisa Rosenbaum? It's not always going to be pretty. But we have to do it. That's our responsibility. Not just the result, not just the decision, how we get there. What's the process? How do we respect everybody's, role in that? That's the Torah of now, and it matters. We don't have to agree, but we have to get to a place where we agree on the process and we agree how those decisions get made. That is as important as the decision itself. This is the Torah of now. And it's not fun, and it's not glorious, and it's not lovely, and it's not esoteric, and it's not lofty. It is necessary. And I love that our Torah doesn't say you're only supposed to be about the lofty stuff unless let someone else deal with the details. That is not the complete Torah. It's both the lofty ideals and the yucky, messy human way we are tempted not to live into the details. Or it doesn't matter if I don't like that person. Then I don't have to do it. Only for somebody I want to do it with. Torah knows that's where we're going to go. Nope. And so names it explicitly. You don't get to do that. And because it's a slave and you put out their I, you don't get to say, well, it's my property. Right? So the Torah knows what our temptation is and is there to say, nuh-uh. The details are important. The Torah of now matters, as do your lofty ideals that you're always trying to figure out how to celebrate and live into. All of it is Torah. Inner Torah and the outer Torah, as Tirsa Firestone says so beautifully, must always be in dialogue. May we figure out ways to do that constructively together. May we figure out ways to be clear and honest and always have as our intention living together in ways that are reflective of being a society of holiness and a nation of Kohanim and nation of priests and priestesses. Shabbat Shalom.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.